what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. But Ian, this is a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Hey, I got to know.
So, I've got one question for you. If Harry Callahan from the movie Dirty Harry used a Colt revolver chambered in .44 Magnum, would they be as popular as the legendary Smith & Wesson end-frame revolvers? Let me know in the comments below. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. And in case you haven't figured it out just yet, we are going to be talking a lot about the .44 Magnum cartridge, and we're going to be talking about the Colt Kodiak revolver here. So welcome, thank you guys so much for watching and tuning into this episode. We greatly appreciate it. What we're going to be doing is running through a full load development with this Colt Kodiak chambered in .44 Magnum, and we're going to walk you through what you need to know about loading the .44 Magnum, give you some good loads that we test during our load development process, and in addition to that, we'll be talking about the gun itself, and I'll be giving you some final thoughts at the end of this video on my experiences while shooting this particular revolver. So stick around, let's go ahead and take a look at the gun itself and walk you through some of the features and specifications of this very nice double action wheel gun. So what we have before us, for those of us that aren't familiar with this particular revolver, the Colt Kodiak is essentially a modified, tuned up Colt Anaconda revolver. The Anaconda revolver is a little bit bigger than the Python revolver, which I just so happen to have right here. This particular Python we've done a separate load development on. You can check out that video for yourself, especially if you're new to loading straight-walled handgun cartridges. If you want some extra reference information to go along with this video, I'd highly encourage you guys check out this video. But as you can see, for size comparison, granted this has a 6-inch barrel, but the Colt Anaconda and the Kodiak is a lot larger framed revolver compared to the Python. And the Colt Kodiak is a reintroduction of the Colt Kodiak, which was originally made quite a few years ago now. So I'm very happy to hear that they've brought this particular revolver back. It is available as 2 different models, one with a 4 1/4 inch barrel, which is what we have here, and then one with a 6-inch barrel. So very neat revolvers. They're essentially tuned. There are some noticeable differences just glancing at it that you can pick up right off the bat. The biggest thing is going to be the porting up here. There are 6 ports on the 4 1/4 inch barrel and 3 on each side. And that will help reduce muzzle rise and aid in reducing that recoil just a little bit. Also, the cylinder is unfluted. Comparing it again to this Colt Python, there are flutes in the cylinder which reduce a little bit of weight. The Colt Kodiak does not have that. Speaking of weight, this revolver weighs in right at 3 pounds, 0.7 ounces, unloaded on my postal scale, which is certified. So a rather heavy revolver, but when you're shooting full power .44 Magnum loads, that is really, really nice to have. So walking you through some of the specifications of this revolver, we have Hogue rubber grips or stocks, whichever nomenclature you prefer. I'm personally unbiased in that debate. Very nice. They have finger grooves, do a good job of absorbing the recoil and giving your hands a good firm grip even when wet and sweaty and stuff like that. So overall, very nice grips on this guy here. And we have a trigger, which I have had a little bit of trouble measuring on my Wheeler Engineering trigger pull gauge. It broke, according to this, on an average of 5 pulls. It measured out at 6 pounds, 7 ounces, which is extremely good for double action trigger pull. And then on another average of 5 pulls in single action, it broke at 3 pounds, 8 ounces. So really, really good trigger on this guy. And of course we are clear here, so I like to let you guys see the travel and all that stuff. So if I flip this around and I squeeze, it feels really, really good through there. Just clean all the way through. Very little to no stack whatsoever. Feels very nice, very smooth, and relatively light for a double action. Now the single action, wow, yeah, no over travel, nothing. It's like a glass rod breaking there. Very nice single action. So, trigger is very important in my eyes when it comes to these revolvers, especially if you're going to use them for hunting, because accuracy is paramount while you're hunting. Shot placement is arguably the most critical factor in ethically and effectively taking down game. So I'm really, really glad to see that this has a good trigger. Now, in talking with other people who have these and talking with a few other gun writers I know who have reviewed these, this trigger on this particular revolver might be an exception. It is exceptionally good. A lot of the other folks I talked to, they're more in the 8-pound range, so maybe I got lucky with this, but I also should probably note at this point, I have shot this revolver. It's got about 300 rounds through it at this point, and that's why it's a little bit dirty. You can see some powder fouling in a couple of places, especially up here around the porting. So I have shot it. It is what I would consider broken in at this point. And that might have to do with the rather lighter trigger pull that we have on this guy. We have again, a 4 1/4 inch barrel with a full underlug, which is rather nice because that underlug does help shield and protect your ejector rod, which personally, I'm a big fan of the aesthetics of that. I also like the ventilated rib barrel. And one other really nice feature about this revolver is it looks very nice and polished on the outside here, but where your sights are, they left it a rather matte finish. And that's just a nice, unique touch showing that they really put some thought and effort into these and got all the little details right. And the same is true with the Colt Python as well here. It is a matte finish on top as well, which I can personally appreciate. And another nice thing, I keep bringing up these Python, but believe it or not, despite this being such a larger framed revolver, the grips from the Python, the Grizzly, and the Kodiak, and the Anaconda are all interchangeable. So you can swap out grips if so desired. And there's quite a few different aftermarket options available at this time. So the rear sight here is fully adjustable for windage and elevation, and there's also a little tiny set screw on top, which is very nice. I'm appreciative of that because when you are shooting full power 44 Magnum loads, recoil is going to be pretty stout. At the front, we have a ramped front sight, black with a red insert on there. And then the top strap is also drilled and tapped for optics mounting, which is really, really nice. A little bit of modernization with the revolver, especially if you're going to use this for hunting. It would be nice to have a scope on there. I see that more as a scope mounting option on the 6-inch barreled revolver as opposed to this 4 1/4, but you could put a red dot on there if so desired, and it's nice to have those options. And really the screws are quite small and they're not unsightly or anything like that, and they do fit very nicely and very flush with the top strap there. And just as a whole, overall, the fit and finish on this revolver is outstanding. It is a high polish all the way around with the exception of where your sight radius is there. And The overall smoothness of the Revolver is very, very apparent. When you begin to run this, and we are clear here, but even just closing the cylinder, very positive, very smooth. It just feels really, really good there. Yeah, just like it's on bearings is what it feels like. So a very nice Revolver. And overall, I'm very, very excited to get to work up some loads for it and see how it performs. Most of the shooting I've done has not been for accuracy as of yet. It's all been done offhand, mostly shooting at steel, just getting a feel for the Revolver itself. But in just a little bit, we're going to take this thing to the range and we're going to see what kind of accuracy it's capable of. But first, let's go ahead and talk you through some of the components that we use to develop loads and the process behind that. Then we'll get into the shooting. When it comes to hand loading for the 44 Magnum cartridge, it's a relatively simple and straightforward operation. So again, rather than boring you with the step-by-step operation and you watch me run through all the steps, we're just going to talk you through what we did to develop loads for this particular handgun in this video. That way you can easily duplicate the results for yourself and see if some of these loads shoot good in your revolvers as well. And if they do, leave a comment. I love to read those comments and see what you guys are trying and what's working for you. So the 44 Magnum is no doubt a powerhouse of a cartridge, and while it's not the most powerful cartridge in the world anymore, it still is very respectable in terms of velocity and penetration, and it's capable of taking some rather large game given the size of the cartridge there. It's an impressive performer, especially in a handgun. So what we went ahead and did to work up loads is we selected some high quality components. We selected Starline cases. They are some of my absolute favorite cases, especially when it comes to handgun cases. They're remarkably consistent, very reliable, and very, very good accuracy in SDs with these particular cases. So then I went ahead and selected some high quality bullets, high quality powders, some medium burn rate powders, all the way up to the more Magnum burn rate powders, and just to maximize our performance here with the 44 Magnum cartridge. We went ahead and selected retting dies for all of our die needs. We have a full length sizing die, an expanding die, and a seating die with built-in roll crimp function. So very easy. What we went ahead and did is ran all the brand new unfired Starline cases through the full length sizing die and resized the case. Then we ran it through the expanding die. We went ahead and checked our case lengths to ensure they were within about 0.02 of an inch of each other, because if there's case length variation there, it will also turn into variation in your roll crimp once you get to that step. So once we ensured they were trimmed to length, we went ahead and applied a chamfer and a deburr. And then we went ahead and primed the case, charged the case with the appropriate powder and charge weight. And all charge weights were accurate to about 0.04 of a grain. And then from there, we went ahead and seated the appropriate bullet to the right overall length. And as a separate step, we applied a roll crimp, which you can kind of see on this guy here. This cartridge has a nice little roll crimp on it. And I'm a big believer in applying that roll crimp as a separate step, so you're not seating, and while you're seating that bullet, you're also compressing that case mouth against it, because I think it hurts the overall uniformity of your hand loads and your bullets and things like that. So that's exactly what we did, and now you can duplicate exactly what we did and see how these loads perform in your gun. Now, one thing I need to make very clear here in this video is when we do these and we work up loads, we're not just shooting 3 or 4 or 5 or however many targets we show in this video. Every time we go into one of these, we've got 20, 30, or even 40 loads that we're going to put to the test, and then we'll showcase to you the best of those loads. If you want to see all the results, the good, the bad, the ugly, or maybe it's just all good depending on the firearm we're testing, you need to head over to loaddata.com, look for the search bar there, type in Handloader TV, look for the 44 Magnum loads and the Colt Kodiak, and see what kind of performance we got. You'll be able to see group sizes, standard deviations, velocities, powder type, bullet, The only thing you won't be able to see is the powder charge weights. We reserve that for subscribers. And if you do decide to subscribe to that, you'll be not only supporting what we do here at Handloader TV, but you'll also have access to the world's largest online reloading manual. And we post a ton of good information, ton of articles on there. It's a great resource. I think if you're an avid handloader, you'll greatly enjoy that subscription to that website. And it helps us keep going here with our testing on video. So if you do subscribe, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. With that, let's go ahead and take some preloaded ammunition and we'll hit the range. And one final note before I forget, we are going to test some factory ammunition as well. We've got some double tap. I think this is our 240 grain hard cast. And one nice thing about this factory ammo is it uses Starline cases. While I didn't use any of these once fired cases, you can bet your boots after this reloading segment and shooting segment, I'm going to be reloading those cases and getting many more firings out of them. So that's one nice thing about double tap ammunition. Generally speaking, they're using Starline cases for their premium handgun stuff, and I'm a big fan of that. Let's hit the range and see what this revolver can do. So we have our Colt Kodiak locked into the Ransom International Master Series handgun rest, and we've hand tightened the knobs, got it all adjusted. We fired about 8 settling shots to get it settled into that grip insert in there, make sure things are nice and consistent. Shot a good group on the cardboard. We've got a target down range at 15 yards, which yes is a little bit close for testing a Magnum handgun cartridge, but this is what we test all of our handguns at initially. And if there's enough interest, we'd be more than happy to do some further out 50, even 100-yard accuracy testing, especially from the Ransom rest. It makes it very repeatable and relatively easy to do. And according to the Kestrel 5700, I've got the weather report here. The temperature is right at 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity is at 85% because we just had a storm blow through. Altitude is 5,000 feet, and pressure when adjusted for elevation at 5,000 feet is right at 29.35. So relatively nice day, a little humid. There's very little to no wind today, which is much appreciated. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll shoot some factory ammunition through this gun, showcase that, and then we'll move on to some hand loads. So up next, we're shooting double tap 44 Magnum with their 240 grain hard cast solid load. This is a personal favorite of mine. I've had good success with it in the past. And for all of this, we're going to be shooting it single action through the Ransom rest. Let's go ahead, put a group on the paper. And there is 5 rounds. The next load that we're putting to the test is using Hodgdon CFE pistol powder, a 12.4 grain charge, with a Hornady 200 grain XTP bullet, Federal 150M primer, Starline cases, and our overall loaded length is 1.595 inches. Let's put a group on the paper. Next up, we're putting IMR 4227 to the test, a 22.5 grain charge with a 240 grain Hornady XTP bullet, Starline cases, Federal 150M primers, and our overall loaded length is 1.600 inches. And in this particular cylinder, we have plenty of room to spare. Let's go ahead, put 5 rounds on a target. And just like that, 5 rounds are on the paper. I am a huge fan of using this Ransom rest, the Master Series rest, for handgun accuracy testing. It is just so much more repeatable than doing it by hand, and so much faster too. Up next, we're using a personal favorite powder of mine in the 44 Magnum, Accurate No. 9 powder, a 19.5 grain charge with a 245 grain State Line bullet semi-wad cutter, sized to .430 inches, and it's hard cast. Starline cases, Federal 150M primers, and our overall loaded length is 1.700 inches. And again, we still have plenty of room to spare with this cylinder. So let's go ahead and shoot a group. And that's partially one of the reasons that Accurate No. 9 is one of my favorite powders in the 44 Magnum. For this last load, we're going to be using Hodgdon H110, a 20.0 grain charge with a 280 grain Swift A-frame bullet, CCI 350, large pistol Magnum primers, and our overall loaded length is 1.600 inches using Starline cases. We're all set up here. Let's shoot a group. So as you can see, we're back from the range now. We've done a ton of testing, put a lot of rounds through this particular revolver, and performance was pretty good. But let's go ahead and dive into it. Don't just take my word for it. Starting out with the double tap ammunition, the factory load with a 240 grain Magnum hard cast solid. We got an average velocity of 1,475 feet a second, which is the fastest load that we're going to showcase in this video. A standard deviation of 11.7, extreme spread of 30, and a group size of 1.34 inches. So overall, for factory loaded ammunition, that is really good performance and really good results. And I can't help but think that those Starline cases in there definitely contribute to that. But overall, very good performance, especially for factory ammunition. Then we went ahead and switched on over to our hand loads, starting out with Hodgdon CFE pistol powder. This is a 12.4 grain charge, which got us 1,343 feet a second with a 200 grain bullet, standard deviation of 8, extreme spread of 23, and pretty much a one-hole group there. near as I could measure out, it was about 0.23 inches. But those one-hole groups like that, especially the smaller they get, the harder they are to measure. So it's about 0.23 inches, but very, very good results nonetheless. Then we went ahead and swapped on over to IMR 4227 powder, a 23 grain charge, and we get a standard deviation of 13 and an average velocity of 1,278 feet a second. And our group size there was just 0.57 inches. So very respectable accuracy and results there with the Hornady XTP 240 grain bullet. Then we went ahead and jumped on over to a cast bullet, a personal favorite of mine from State Line Bullets. This is their 245 grain hard cast semi-wad cutter. They're sized to 0.430 inches with accurate number 9 powder, another personal favorite of mine. We got a standard deviation of 14, average velocity of 1,425 feet a second, which is very respectable, and a group size of just 0.84 inches. So really good results there, very pleased with that. And as a whole, I've shot a lot of these State Line bullets, and across the board they've always performed very well. Gone through several bags of these guys now, the 245 grainers, and very pleased. So if you haven't tried them out, I would recommend giving them a whirl. Then last but certainly not least, we swapped over to Hodgdon H110 powder with a 280 grain Swift A-frame bullet. And one thing that should be noted, up until now, everything we've been using have been standard primers. They're Federal 150Ms or match primers. They are not Magnum primers. They're just standard large pistol primers. Now we've swapped over to a Magnum primer. This is the CCI 350 Magnum primer with H110 powder. We got a standard deviation of 6, extreme spread of just 18, and an average velocity of 1,288 feet a second. Very respectable with a 280 grain bullet, and a group size of just 0.98 inches. So a quick note on the primer selection and the reason why. I subscribe to Brian Pierce's line of thinking from Handloader magazine, that the primer you use should be dependent upon what kind of powder you're using. So in particular, the slower spherical Magnum handgun powders such as H110, Little Gun, Winchester 296, which is pretty much identical to H110. Those kinds of powders, they need a Magnum primer in order to ignite those powder charges reliably and, most importantly, consistently. It just seems to work a whole lot better that way. So that's why we went ahead and swapped over to a Magnum primer with this H110 load. And as you can see from the other loads, the standard deviations are pretty good, very respectable, and they just use the standard primer. So that's one thing that I think is worth pointing out and worth noting there. Also, in particular, with those slower burning Magnum pistol powders, I would highly recommend a pretty stout roll crimp with those guys. It just seems to increase the overall consistency and uniformity of that powder burn, and as a result, you get better standard deviations and extreme spreads. So with that, we've covered just about everything. I want to leave you with a few personal thoughts on the Revolver itself, and we'll close out the video from there with some of your comments. So now that you guys have reviewed the targets, you've seen the shooting, you've seen the Revolver performance and the handload performance, factory ammunition on paper, you can make an educated decision about each of these things, including the Revolver, and come to your own conclusions, and I highly encourage that. But I would like to leave you with my personal thoughts and some of my own personal experience from shooting this particular Revolver. At this point in time, we've got about 500 or 600 rounds through the gun, so it's well and broken in, and I've got some personal thoughts. So starting out with the Revolver itself here, and of course we are clear here, it's always clear, check it multiple times before it gets in here. But the biggest thing that I like about this Revolver is the trigger. And again, I'm not sure if this is a bit of a unicorn trigger or if Colt is going in there and tuning up these Grizzlies or Kodiaks a little bit more than the Anacondas or even just the standard Python, because comparing it to all the other Colt revolvers I've handled to date, this trigger is excellent. if I remember correctly on the digital trigger pull gauge, it was breaking right around 6.5 pounds in double action. And it feels really, really good. Then in single action, I think it was about half that weight. But that trigger has no over travel, no stack whatsoever. It just feels really, really good. So the trigger is by far my favorite part of this revolver so far. And the porting does indeed reduce recoil. It does so at the cost of noise. It is an extremely loud revolver, especially with full power loads. It is noisy. I recommend double plugs. It's just like shooting a braked rifle. You might want in the ear plugs and then over the ear muffs just to protect your hearing while practicing. But with that said, the porting does reduce recoil. And over extended shooting sessions, especially like the load development we conducted, it was a very welcome thing. Although the ransom rest took away all the recoil from my hands for the load development, so that was nice. But I still put quite a few rounds offhand, off camera, shooting this thing. And if that's something you guys are interested in and you want to see, this is a personal revolver of mine. We can bring it back at any time. So if you want more information, want to see it tested at 50 yards, 100 yards, shot at 200 yards, you want to see me shooting it offhand more, we can definitely make that happen. That is not a problem. So let me know in the comments. But one nice thing about that ransom rest is it does remove the shooter error and the shooter consistency as well, because we are not testing how consistent of a shot I am, how accurate I can be looking through a short sight radius. We are actually testing the mechanical accuracy of the handgun. And I think that's really important because the mechanical accuracy of a firearm is a really, really good indicator as to the quality and the overall performance that a firearm is capable of. And if you're like me, you're all about that performance. And accuracy is a very, very important metric in and of itself, but a good indicator as to quality and fit and finish and other things like that as well. And I think we saw phenomenal accuracy out of this particular revolver. And I'll be the first to admit that that ransom rest makes a huge difference in that, and it's probably impossible to test mechanical accuracy any other way, in my opinion. Because quite simply, handguns are harder to shoot than rifles, and I'll be the first to admit that I am not the best revolver shooter. I'm not the best handgunner out there, especially with the 44 Magnum. I get fatigued, I get tired. When I'm fresh, I can probably hold a 2-inch group at 15 yards, but when I'm tuckered out and starting to feel the recoil from it, or my hands and wrists are getting tired, holding a 4-inch group at 15 yards is, for me to throw a shot, it's very, very common, I'll put it that way, especially towards the end of the day after a few hundred rounds. So I think in reading up about these revolvers and looking at some of the other reviews, I've seen things saying they're 2.5-inch guns at 15 yards or 4.5-inch guns at 25 yards, things like that. And I strongly disagree with that. This particular revolver performed way, way better than that. And again, I could have a unicorn here. It's just a sample size of one, but the mechanical accuracy of this gun was exceptional. And it really does reflect the fit and finish and the quality put into this product. But those are just my personal thoughts. Take them with a grain of salt, and as always, come to your own conclusions. So with that, I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, give us a thumbs up. Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're notified when we post our next video. And getting back to those comments, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things you guys have been talking about in our previous videos. I'll read and respond to some of those and close out that video doing that. Alright, so I've got my phone pulled up here with some comments that you guys have gone ahead and posted on some of our more recent videos. So let's go ahead and dive into them. We actually just posted a video on the 357 Magnum load development for a Smith & Wesson Model 19 Combat Magnum revolver. And let's go ahead and see what you guys are saying about that. So I apologize in advance for any names I butcher. Bear with me. I can't even pronounce Lapua right, so names not the best. I apologize in advance. But this is from Point for Matt. He says, great video. What do you think of IMR 4227 in 357 Magnum? Too slow. No, not at all. I don't think it's too slow. I'm going to go ahead and like your comment. And, while we're on here, we'll do that as I respond. But no, I don't think IMR 4227 is too slow. It did use it in this 44 Magnum video, but it's perfectly acceptable in the 357 Magnum as well. I've used it in the past and no complaints. The only thing you do have to watch for with 4227, especially the lower powder charges, it seems like you can actually get a little bit of buildup from that powder. It's a little bit dirty as you're ejecting cases, you know. And let's be honest, when we're running drills and shooting a lot, we're not always the best about actually bringing the gun down as far as it needs to in order to do our reloads, right? Using gravity. So what will happen is underneath here, your ejector star there, sometimes you'll get some unburnt powder and things like that built up under there, just some fouling. When you go to close the revolver, it won't want to close. So that's just one thing to keep in mind with that particular powder. Haven't noticed it a whole lot in 357 Magnum, but I've noticed it a whole lot in 45 Colt. So just a personal experience there. And then let's see, this is from Siski Use 6. He says, I prefer my old Combat Masterpiece. Well, if you've got an original Combat Masterpiece, those are phenomenal guns. The old Combat Magnums are great. This is a really neat gun because they did remove the lock. There are a few comments on here. We just posted this video that are saying it's a shame it has a lock and going on about that. But actually, they removed the lock, so they probably haven't gotten to that part in the video yet. But let's see what else you guys are saying here. This is on our Pedersoli 1874 Sharps, the Q Down Under 4570. He says, excellent video. What were the bullets sized to? So I shoot that rifle enough to know off the top of my head, everything I run through that rifle is sized to .358 inches. Not 357, I'm sorry, 3.5. Everything in that rifle is sized to .458 inches. 0.458. It likes that size. I've tried .459. Accuracy's very comparable, but .457, it starts to fall off the wagon with that rifle. But slug your bore, see what your actual barrel measurement is, and I recommend going at least 1/1000th over that. That's usually where you're going to find the best accuracy. Great question. That came from William Cooper, 2496. This is on our 6mm Remington Favorite Rifles and Loads video. This is Skywaves 5175. He says, I have both the 243 and the 6mm Remington. Love them both. I reloaded a slow velocity load using Varget and was amazed how accurate it shoots with this load. The 6mm I brought back in 1981. I took $2 when I was short on cash to buy a 7 rem mag, I'm assuming, 7mm mag. So I use it now and no regrets. My brother took $2. I also used it on coyotes and rock chucks as well. Thanks for posting this video. One of my favorite rifles. Well, you are very welcome. It is one of my favorite rifles as well, and it is amazing how well Varget shoots in that 6mm Remington. A lot of people overlook the 6mm Remington in the shadow of the 243, but it's a phenomenal cartridge, really. I greatly enjoy shooting that rifle and messing around with it. And on that same video here, we have, this is from Jeffrey Rutz, 8286. He says, very informative video. I have a 244 model 722. For deer, I use 85 grain partition, phenomenal bullet, with reloader 19. Good powder. Kills deer dead for me. I also use varmint grenades on groundhogs. It worked. Yep. Love the varmint grenade on any varmint. Works really, really well there. Let's see what else you guys are saying here. I've got a couple of comments on our 9mm Luger Super Snake Shot video. This is from Meal Team 6. He says, I've been reloading for 25 years, and this is the kind of reloading content I like. Creative ways to reload non-standard loads. Awesome video, and keep them coming. Well, thank you very much, Meal Team 6. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. Yeah, those are interesting loads. If you haven't watched that video, I knew it wouldn't be super popular, but I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more views because it is a really unique load. It's very creative, very innovative, and it actually works. It works better than any other snake load out there and will cycle the action of your firearms. So if you haven't watched that, I'd encourage you guys to check it out. So thanks for the comments there. Let's see, this is Made with Scraps. 6 days ago, he says, thank you for the really nice video. I do this with my 45 ACPs made from 308 cases and 41 mag dies for downsizing and find it much easier and offers best results if the case neck area is annealed before sizing. I use a 410 shot shell wad with number 7 shot on the bottom and then number 9 on top for a duplex load that produced the best energy and pattern for me at 7 to 10 feet. My snake shot loads cycle the same as any other round, leaving me feeling comfortable when in the Nevada deserts. Yeah, great comment, and that's what I love about you guys. When you guys comment, you give so much information. I've actually dabbled with 45 auto made from 308 cases and kind of doing the same thing that I did with the 9mm Luger cases. So very cool. Nice to see that I'm not the only one that's dabbled with such things. So I appreciate all that technical information that you guys share. It's absolutely wonderful. And then this is from FMD-AD-DM5QO. He says, Jeremiah, do you recommend those aftermarket turret heads for the Redding T7? Yeah, I do. He's actually talking about the turret head that we have on right here. This is the Creedmoor Sports adaptive turret head, I believe, or it's from Creedmoor Sports. They have two different types. This one is the multi-station without the wedges. I kind of prefer this one just because it's easier. You can thread your dies right in. You don't have to use the wedges and all that. Rotates really nice. Definitely a nice upgrade. If you already have a T7 and you don't want another press, or you don't want to spend the money on a brand new press when you can just upgrade this one, Creedmoor Sports turret head is a very, very good option there. Now let's see, we've got one more comment. Let's go ahead and read here. Try and find an interesting one if we can. You guys have so much technical information that you guys share all the time. I absolutely love it. Okay. So this is on our 280 Ackley improved hunting loads. We get this question a lot, and this guy comments a fair amount on our videos. So he says, this is from Hill Country Hurricane, I think is what it's supposed to say. It's abbreviated, 6720. He says, love my 280 AI, great video. What shooting bench is that? I like it. So yeah, we get comments on the shooting bench all the time. It is unfortunately a Koenig Jaeger super bench, and they are no longer in business, so that bench is no longer being produced. If anybody knows somebody who would be interested in reproducing those benches, we have about probably 5 or 6 of those comments a week asking about the shooting bench. Like, it's almost every day. And you guys love it, and I wish I didn't have such bad news. They simply don't exist anymore. Every now and then you might see one on the used market. I think I've seen 2 others in my lifetime, not counting the one we have. So They are pretty rare, unfortunately. If you're looking for a really good alternative though, because they were very pricey, and I'm sure now they're even more just because of supply and demand, but a good alternative is Stuckey's Sturdy Shooting Benches. We use them all the time. It's been featured in a few videos, especially when we're out shooting long range and we're not at the normal range. Great benches, very solid, very secure, and yeah, that would be an alternative bench I would recommend at this time. So that's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, don't forget the thumbs up. Leave a comment if you've got any questions or concerns. I do still read every single comment. I just don't go in there and reply to them like I normally do. But I do read every single comment. So thank you so much for that, and we will catch you in the next episode.